or modified, just because, y'all bothered to show up, so might as well answer your direct questions. And our new training schedule, you may have heard me mention it earlier before. We are doing these once a month. So the next time that we will have a basic training is going to be May 9th. So keep that in your pockets that the next time we're going to have one of these is going to be on the 9th. And it should be on your calendar. If you showed up to this one, should be on your calendar already.
I think you mean July, Sunny, right?
July? Yes, sorry. July. Oh, it's not April anymore. It's not even May. Thank you, Duncan. July. And let's go ahead and just look at the list of things that I'm hoping to cover with y'all today. Kind of want to talk about the authenticated user view, what it looks like to be signed in and navigate throughout the tools. The content module, so that's going to go over basic pages, landing pages, mainly the difference between the two of them, what row and cards look like, and then additionally how to upload stuff to your media library appropriately, and how to edit from the web browser view. So essentially, I want to show you lots of shortcuts that could make working within the Drupal platform a whole lot easier and manageable. So this is the general layout. Since we have a smaller group, if there's something specific that you want to see to kind of wedge in here, raise your hand, put it in the chat. More than happy to work it in to the training schedule. Or if you just have a few questions that you'd like to have answered or anything, you guys showed up. So you get the training session all to yourself. So take advantage of that, ask questions. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and switch gears and just show you those new sites before we get started. So give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen and see that new training site. Awesome. Yes, Duncan? Oh, do you mean to use a thumb instead of a hand?
Yeah, I pressed the wrong thing.
Okay, perfect. So this is the new training site. This is cms-training.colorado.gov. I'm going to pop this in the chat for you. So this is the site that has all of the training resources. So how-tos, step-by-step guides, FAQ sections, contact us sections, and also blurbs about accessibility. I'm always going to recommend referencing OIT's website when it comes to accessibility. They have lots and lots of updated, well-read, well-thought-out guides that I think are massively helpful and definitely should be kind of kept in your pocket as you think about accessibility on your website. And it's hard to find free guides for stuff like this. So take advantage of the information that they've made available to you. I think specifically some really helpful places to start out with is going to be images and accessibility regarding images. Alternative text is probably a relatively new concept to a lot of people. So learning how to write appropriate alternative text is always going to be a good idea. And just because I like plain language, check out plain language and check out like what it means to write in plain language when it comes to referencing links on your page, when it comes to referencing content on your page. This is just a really great way to assess the reading level of your site and make it accessible for people of all reading levels. So definitely take this into account when you are writing up blurbs for your site, because everyone reads at a different level. Perfect. So it's just something to keep in mind. I went ahead and popped a link in there into the chat so you have it as a reference. But if nothing else, check out plain language. I think it's massively helpful when it comes to content accessibility. Additionally, we have our VPAT. So if you have a question about what our roadmap looks like when it comes to accessibility, we have this available as well. And then everything that you can see in the How Do I, so the How Do I tab is where you're going to find all of those training resources that you can access 24/7. So you don't need to wait for this training call. You don't have to wait to schedule anything. You can reference pretty much everything here. And everything is separated out by modules. So you may notice that in your toolbar, you have these modules. So that's how we've decided to set up this particular resource site by those modules, since we figured if you're already used to looking at these, that must be the best way to, present this information to y'all. And then the old CMS site should be right here. This is project resources. This is where release notes go as well. And additional training. So if you do need the link to the Drupal 10 training again, it's still found here too. Our VPAT and a complete list of websites. I love the complete list of websites for one reason. I think it's really important to reference when it comes to building out content, especially if you have no idea what you're doing or you have no idea how to display a certain piece of information. You can always reference maybe a similar entity. If you have a town, a city, or a special district like a water district or anything like that, check out how they've laid out their site. That's a really great way to get a good idea of how everyone else has their stuff put together, how you should display these stuff. If you do have specific town ordinances or anything like that, like something you must abide to, then absolutely keep that in mind. But there's no shame in referencing. All of you guys are using the exact same tools as long as you're not copying and pasting the exact wording within their site. I say absolutely go wild. Check out what other people are doing and see if that kind of works for how you want to display your content as well. Any questions about the general resource sites that are available to y'all? Nope. Awesome. So I'm going to also just pop the link to this specific page in the chat too, just because I find it so helpful. And then let's just get started. So when we talk about the authenticated view within your site, and I'm going to be picking on the demo site today, I mean when you are signed in. So anytime you want to sign into your site, you're going to hit that /user in that URL bar. And I'm going to use login with Google. The preferred login method is pretty much always going to be that Google single sign-on, but we understand lots of people do have that preference for the username and password. So if you have a username and password, go ahead and leverage that. However, and mine may look a smidgen different than what you are looking at. The demo site has lots of little testing stuff in it, and mine is also set up to be in dark mode. So mine will be darker. However, it will be set up pretty much the exact same way, just visually looks a little bit different. And just getting started, anytime that I start a new project, the first thing that I have my partners do is collect and upload their documents and media items. So that's going to be images. I do this because so much about Drupal is pre-populating content and then referencing it on a page. And that rule follows for images and follows for documents as well. So to upload any of my documents, my first step is to go to content. And this is your content library. This is where your pages live, articles, events, news feeds, things like that live within your content. However, my documents and my images do not. I'm going to be searching for my media tab up here. It's also possible that yours could look a little bit different. So for example, just picking on CMS training because it does probably look a little bit closer to the sites that you're working with. I'm going to wait for it to think. Yours may look like a content tab and then a second tab with an ellipses. When you click on that tab with the ellipses, you should see the media option there. So just in case you don't see it lined up as a bunch of tabs at the top of your page, find that ellipses, click on it, and then you should find media as the second to last option. Clicking on media is going to take you to your media library. So it's a separate library. This is only going to contain images, documents, nothing else. So just getting started, when we have our documents, we're ready to upload them. And just a pro tip, I would ensure that they are in PDF format. It's really easy to export them to PDF through Microsoft Word. I'm more than happy to send any resources you need to figure out those steps. So if you're not 100% sure how to do that, feel free to reach out. More than happy to get that situated for you. My next step is to click on Add Media. You're going to see there are 4 options. Only 2 are really available to you. Video and video uploads are legacy from an older version of Drupal where we did have the bandwidth to host video streaming. However, we have way too many sites to do this now. We prefer that you go ahead and upload those videos to YouTube and then embed them within the site. That's not something we'll cover today. However, If you do want to have a little play-by-play about that, reach out to the partner support portal and request a training on how to do embedded items into your site. More than happy to get something like that set up for you. But let's go ahead and click on document. So I would ensure that your document is in PDF format. It will accept all sorts of flavors of format when it comes to documents. However, we have to think about accessibility. We have to think about how people are accessing this content on your site. Lots of people are going to be accessing it from their phones. Microsoft Word files, those regular docx files, don't play super nice on phones. They like to be opened up within the Microsoft Office on a computer that has that installed, right? So not everyone's going to have that kind of setup. PDFs will open in a browser, downloadable within a browser. They can zoom in, they can zoom out, and they play nice with most screen readers that are currently available of all different flavors of price points and accessibility. So people who are using free browser extensions can access a PDF the same way that people who use very pricey screen reader tools. And we want to give it a name. We want to make sure that the name that we're giving it within the media library matches the file name. That way, there's not any confusion about what people are accessing. There's not any discrepancies on the site either. So when I name it test in here, and I go to choose my file, but look at the horrible state my unorganized document folder is in. But I've uploaded this test file 5 times, so it's going to get a 5 at the end of that. Just ignore that for my sake. But this test matches the original name of the document, right? We want things to be aligned. We want them to make sense for all of our users. We can also check to make sure that the document that we've uploaded is the correct one. Because once we've uploaded the file, if we click on this link, it will give us a preview of what we've just uploaded. So I always like to double check my work just in case, just to make sure I've uploaded the correct thing. This is a good way just to, check. You could be done here. However, just a couple of optional steps just to throw them out there. If you are concerned about search engine optimization, if you have a file that has maybe a complicated name, full of legal jargon, all that good stuff, and you know that there's a shorthand for a lot of these things, I would go ahead and use whatever context you think people might use to find the document. Phrases, words, you don't have to, throw a comma in between anything. This could be a stream of consciousness, paragraph style text. However, it would use whatever you put in this description field to associate with the file so that if people use any of the keywords you put in this description to search, it will pull up this file. Completely optional. If the content inside of the file matches what the title is called and everyone knows to search by that, then absolutely this is an optional step, but could just help you in the long run kind of keep things tidy. Related tags, this is an internal sorting feature. So if you wanted to find something specific, if you have just a ton of documents, I always give things in my trainings the test tag so that I can go in and remove them, either when a site is launched or we no longer need the testing materials on the site, or I should certainly go in and delete a few because apparently I've uploaded this file 5 times to the demo site. But it's just a good way to have like an internal sorting measure established. Now I can hit save and my document has been uploaded into my media library. Any questions on documents before I move on to images? Nope, already. So images, when I click on that image button, this looks pretty much identical to where we were just at, right? So same deal. I'm going to name this the same name as the file that I have. And I'm naming this guy Cannoli because I always pick on this image of this dog named Cannoli from the CIA Take-Two Dog Adoption Program. I don't know. I just like him. He looks fun. So unlike documents, we have now an extra step. This is alternative text. Miguel, Phil, have you ever written alternative text before? You can also just give me a thumbs up. That's fine. All right. We got a thumbs up. Okay, then I won't harp on it too much. a lot of alternative text is thinking about the context of things. So because cannoli is up for adoption, it may be really important to describe the features of cannoli, right? How big is he? That fur texture, that fur color, what potential breed he could be. All of these things would matter. However, if this was a picture of cannoli running around playing, it would be more important to describe the action of the dog versus what the dog looks like, right? The difference between like a portrait and a candid photo. So definitely keep that in mind. If you have an odd one, if you have a weird alternative text question, feel free to hit up the partner support line, and we can also send you some of OIT's resources. OIT has a really, really good image accessibility resource that I think is definitely worth keeping in your pocket. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to go ahead and add some alternative text to cannoli here. Okay. Oh, could help if I knew how to spell portrait. And now, same deal, that description just adds SEO to the image. Related tags, still the same thing, adds internal sorting to the image. But once we've uploaded our image, we have an alternative text, we can hit save, and now we're done with images. So that's the media library. And just in case you're curious, that test tag I added, you can filter in this related tag section. I'm just going to find test and hit filter, and it's going to show me all of the many different times that I've uploaded cannoli in that test file to this site. But I don't think there's any questions here, so I'm just going to keep it moving along for the sake of time. And I'm going to go back to our content sphere, and we're going to talk about pages. So to add a page to your site, we can click on Add Content. You may notice that there are two, arguably three different page types. There's the basic page, the landing page, and a layout. A basic page is pretty much the pages you've probably been working in this whole time. This is basically sub pages to landing pages. You can think of it. Landing pages are like a home page. So most sites are really only going to have one landing page, and that's going to be the home page that comes with the templated site. That's that Node 9999 page. However, if you have a larger page that requires a few different home pages and sub pages under those, absolutely, you can use multiple landing pages. The real main difference between your basic page and your landing page is a landing page is going to have that Jumbotron. It's going to have those hero rows. And then it also does not have the CK editor built in to the page. And so here's what I mean by that. This is your basic page. This is your CK editor. You've probably also heard this be referred to as your WYSIWYG editor. That means what you see is what you get. All these buttons do something, and you can use all of these buttons to build out an entire page if you wanted to. You can even combine your CK editor and your rows and cards to build one complete page. I would keep in mind that anything you do within your CK editor is going to sit on top of all of your rows and cards. So if that formatting bothers you, I would just either use rows and cards or the CK editor instead of combining both. However, if that intrigues you, then I would encourage you to use both. The landing page, when I open it up, this looks significantly different, right? We do not have that CK editor front and center for us to use and build off of. We have to use rows to build out our landing pages. And we have lots of different row types. You may have heard me mention the hero row when I talked about those differences. Think hero as images. So you can put an image background behind your row and then have content sit on top of that background. I believe Think Demo has one. Or not anymore. Well, it's what it says on the tin. If you want an image background, if that is something that intrigues you, I would leverage a landing page. Everything is kind of, there's no real hard rules about what you can and cannot use. Really is up to you. I just like to have those rules so I don't get mixed up. And basic pages are sometimes a little bit easier to build out than landing pages. And additionally is the Jumbotron. So that Jumbotron is this big banner kind of, it can be a carousel or it can be one singular image that sits at the top of your page. This isn't in my normal lineup to discuss on this training. However, we have a smaller group, so if this interests you to learn more about, definitely raise a hand, put it in the chat, and I can go over it as well. But just to make sure that we can cover everything we need to in the time that we have, I'm going to park it right there. But if it trips your trigger, if you want to learn a little bit more about it, definitely say something. You kind of have the floor today. But just to get into our basic page, like I said, we can build out an entire page with these options here. And I'm just going to pick on my Lipsum page. This is where I get all of my placeholder Latin. And here is a fun tip. If you're copying content from an external site or your own site in its external facing state, we want to make sure that when we copy it and when we paste it, that we are removing the formatting from it, right? We don't want any of this font or color or WebKit and styling. We don't want any of this to carry over into the site because it could conflict with the style guide that we already kind of have established in our Drupal platform. And that can cause weird accessibility flags that are not valid. And also not fun to have to like remediate that later on down the road. So when I copied that piece of text on my keyboard, I can hold Control and Shift, or if you're working on a Mac, it will be Command and Shift, and then V as in Victor, and that strips the formatting. So let me paste it both ways just so you can see. So maybe a little hard to tell right now, but this first one is without formatting and the second one is with. You can probably tell the size is a little different, the font's a little bit different. When I click on this source code here, I hope we can see the main difference here. This is just what we call plain text. No style, no color, no nothing, just plain text. Like getting a plain cheeseburger. You're only getting the meat and cheese here. Here is where it has all of the style, right? It has its own unique font. It has its own unique color. And I can see this in this RGB lineup here. It has style, it has WebKit, it has all sorts of different extra stuff. This is what conflicts with the existing code on the site and can cause those weird accessibility flags that are not valid and kind of a pain to remediate. So that's my pro tip of the day, is that if you are copying content from an external site or your own site that's external facing, you want to make sure that you are stripping that formatting. And don't worry, I'm putting this in the chat for you to use. If you are not a fan of keyboard shortcuts, you can also right-click and select Paste as Plain Text. And it will paste it. Perfect. So let me go ahead and unclick that source, delete that yucky blurb, and just keep my regular plain text. Alrighty, a couple of things I want to cover within the CK editor. I want to talk about how to build buttons and how to insert images in here before we move on to some other stuff, just because I think these are important things to know. So within our WYSIWYG editor, if we wanted to embed an image here, remember, we have already uploaded our image to our media library first. That's always going to be step one, because when I click on this insert media button, and it's the one with the music note, it's going to open up a mini media library. So it's going to show me everything that I've already uploaded into this site. I'm going to pick on cannoli. I'm going to insert it. And it's going to upload it as a thumbnailed image. This is also labeled as a small media render. I know that this is happening because this cannoli image is actually pretty massive. If I insert full content, then I can display the entire image as it was originally created. However, One thing to note is that this could impact load times on certain pages. So if you have a really large image that is super, super high def, you do run the risk of a page reacting a little bit slower. A thumbnail takes that image and just squishes it down so that it is much easier to load onto the site. And let's say underneath Cannoli, I want to insert that button link. When you click on the image, either to make changes to the size, the alternative text, or to add a link, you should see these extra paragraph buttons. If you click on that, that just inserts a paragraph break under the image so that you can keep typing. So to create a button, first you have to write the text within the button itself. So if I want my button to say this is a button, that's what I'm going to write. I'm going to highlight this, and then I'm going to create a hyperlinked piece of text first. So you can leave it at this stage. If you don't want a button and you just want a piece of text to be clickable, you can leave it after this step. However, a button just adds a little extra style to the site. So I'm going to click on that chain link icon, sits between the picture and the flag. And I'm going to search for a pre-existing document or a pre-existing content piece, right? Because remember, Drupal is so much about remembering and referencing existing pieces of content. So if I were searching for my document that I've uploaded, oops, that's not even close. I'm going to search test, right? Because that's what I named the document. And that's the importance of naming your documents accurately across your files and across the actual media node itself. I'm going to scroll all the way down to the file section here. Because remember, I'm trying to upload a file. And I'm going to search for one of my many test PDFs that I've uploaded, right? And I also know I'm uploading the correct option because it says .pdf. You may notice that there's a media section that has the exact same content inside of it. When it comes to uploading PDFs, we want to make sure that we are selecting from the file section, not the media section. And we know it's the file because we see the .pdf in the name. Media doesn't have that. So I'm going to click .pdf, and I'm going to get this nice long string of a URL pathway to leverage. I'm just going to click that green save button so that I now have this hyperlinked piece of text. My last step is to just click on this text and then go to my styles section. I will admit, this is not laid out in my very favorite way of all time. However, I'll give you the tricks that you need to kind of learn how to use this successfully. So in demo, here we go. In demo, you may notice these lists of buttons right here. Primary, default, success, info, warning, and danger. These are the colors that are available to use. So when I am setting up my button and I click on my styles, it's a little hard to tell because they're cut off, but this is primary, success, danger, warning, info, and default. So these first two rows are those colors to choose from. So if I wanted a red button, I would select danger. I will open it back up, and then you have the options of large, small, and I believe extra large. I always just use large as a baseline. It's a good size. And so now I have multiple styles applied. So you can see I have these highlighted. And now when I hit save, oops, gotta give your page a name first. That will be helpful. So now when I hit save, I have a nice large red button that I can click on that opens that PDF right up for us. Any questions about the stuff within the WYSIWYG editor? All right, so far so good. So let's talk a little bit about rows and cards. Like I said, on your basic pages, you can really mix and match or not do it at all. So you can build an entire page within the WYSIWYG editor, or you can build with both options. And there are two really different types of rows to think about. There's equal columns and there's unequal columns. You may also see them be referred to as uneven columns. This means that equal columns, no matter how many columns you establish on your site or on your row, and just to keep in our brain, cards and columns are synonymous. Cards live inside the columns that you set up. So equal columns means that no matter how many columns I have, no matter how many cards I'm placing on my row, they're all going to share an equal amount of space. So if I were to only put one card on a row, it's going to take up the entirety of the row, right? It's only one column. If I were to put two cards on a row, it's going to split that row in half. 3 cards on the row, third, fourth, so on and so forth. This is really helpful if you're using the same card type all in one singular row. So for example, this row here has 3 icon cards. So this column is split up into thirds. And these are clickable little links as well. So they share an equal amount of space. Same thing here, except now you can see why it can get a little tricky when you mix content types, where it's going to have a hard time informing the other of what size it should be. And here is a map card on a row by itself. So this is an equal columns row with one column. It's going to stretch from end to end. Perfect. And uneven columns lets you really control the size of everything. So if you need to have a little bit more control, if you're mixing different content pieces, I would absolutely leverage the uneven columns instead. One thing to note with your uneven columns is that you can only have 2 columns or 3 columns. Can't have 4, can't have 1, can't have 5. You can only have 2 or 3. And these are already split up in kind of a predetermined fraction. So in your column section, you can choose between 3/4, 1/4, or 2/3, 1/3, and those flip-flopped either way. And then for your 3 uneven columns, again, it's going to be 1/4, 1/2, and then 2/3, 1/6, kind of mixed around, shuffled around. And you can change the column style. So even if you put content on this row and you decide you don't like how the columns are set up, you can change the style after adding content and it will just resize everything for you. So you don't have to start over, which is pretty nice. For the sake of time, I'm not going to be able to cover all of the card types, but just know that the basic card is just a mini CK editor. So when I choose the basic card, right, same exact thing, just in a little smaller format. And I also want to talk about some legacy stuff too. So you may notice that there could be some redundant card types here. Image and media is a big one. Anytime that you want to add an image to a row, you're going to select the media card, not the image card. The image card is legacy for older sites, which means that we essentially keep it intact so it doesn't break anything on their site. It doesn't remove anything off of their site. However, we don't want it to be actively used past that point, right? This is because it's not going to receive updates. It's not going to receive any fixes. So if it's buggy, if it's having issues, it's just not going to be fixed. So if you want the most up-to-date image option, it's going to be your media card. And just like the WYSIWYG, in this media card item, it's just a mini media library. Oh, and the demo site looks a little funky. So let me go ahead and see if I can pick on training instead, just for right now. I'm going to pick on your example page, Duncan. In my rows and cards, oh, it's a landing page. Oh, what? Basic. Okay, there we go. So I'm just going to choose equal columns. I'm going to go ahead and add this new row. I'm going to select media. And then under media card item, now it shows me the mini media library. So just one thing to note, another legacy content piece inside of here. Sorry, I'm trying to find my spot again. is calendars and view. So anytime that you want to set up a calendar within your site, you're going to use the view card. The view card also houses the article chain, things like that. So when you want to throw your articles in here, you can. When you want to throw your calendars, you can in here as well. The view card holds all. So it does all sorts of different things. So just some things to keep in mind. And we have about 15 minutes. Okay, so I want to talk about structure and mainly about menus at this point. Do you have any questions, anything in particular that you want to see out of the basic pages, the rows and cards, any specific content pieces? It's not worked in naturally to my normal training, but if there's something that you want to see specifically done, either take the time, type it in chat, and we'll circle back around to it, or raise your hand. More than happy to customize this a little bit for a smaller group. And I think we're comfortable moving forward. Oh, yes, Phil.
I have a quick question. So as far as rows and cards go, one of the issues that I'm having right now is that I've got a paragraph content on my left side, and there are 2 equal columns. And on the right side, one of the requesters wanted a YouTube video. And so they're sharing basically that same row. So
Yes.
one is on the left, one is on the right. The problem is that the YouTube video is like 2 lines higher on the right than the content is on the left. And
Got
so
you.
I
So
don't
the
quite know
YouTube
how
video
to
sits
make
like
those
this,
even.
and the
Right,
paragraph is
right.
like this. That is interesting. So I'm trying to think of what would cause that, because I don't necessarily think that using uneven columns would necessarily fix that. It might be something within the iframe that the YouTube video uses, kind of bumps it up a hair than the content it sits next to. And that's the tricky thing with embedded content, is that you are sort of at the mercy of the code that is there when it's given to you. And because it's external code populated elsewhere, we wouldn't necessarily be able to manually fix that for you, because we don't want to break anything. And we certainly don't want to break your site. So
Phil,
I would say, oh, Duncan, yes.
I was just gonna say, on some of the iframes, I worked with another customer on this. You can change kind of that embed code so that it's the size of the iframe kind of adjusts as well, instead of being like a standard width and height. And it might be worth looking into that. I know that info's all over the internet, right? Because these iframes are pretty standard. So.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea. Thanks.
Yeah, and the height will be in pixels all of the time. So if you're ever looking for that specific piece, you're going to be looking for PX next to some numbers. And so that would indicate the pixels on that guy. But yeah, that's the tricky part with embed code for sure. But I would play around with popping it into an unequal column row just to see if that would help at least resize things in a way that you like. But yes, thanks, Duncan. Definitely, you can poke and prod at that iframe for sure. Okay, so let's talk about structure. And mainly, I want to talk about menus. So when you hover over structures, you're going to receive a pretty overwhelming list, right? These are one of the shortcuts that I want to show you. In your main navigation, which is this bar that sits at the top of your page, when you hover over it, a little pencil should pop up. I'm going to have a few different options than you, just because I have a little bit of an elevated admin status. But selecting edit menu allows you to edit the menu directly. Don't have to fuss with the structure menu. Don't have to fuss with the menus menu. You can go directly to the menu that you want to actually make changes to. And so to add a link, so let's say we want to take our new test page and add a link for it to our menu. We're going to click that add link button. We're going to pop into the menu link title here. I'm just going to say testing. And just like everything else, we are searching for the name of the page. You can absolutely also paste an external link in here. So if you have a form or if you have a different website for people to access, you can paste that link in here. However, if you're linking to an internal page that already exists, you're just going to search for it like this. So when I search for home and I click on this home button here, this is linked up. It may not look linked up because it doesn't look like a traditional URL pathway, but that's because we're using nodes to reference these. And we can think of nodes as just a number identifier for a content piece. So rather than using a pathway, which is this long string of text up here, we're using a node. This means that no matter how the pathway changes, that number never changes. So you can change the name of the page, and that would change the pathway. However, it would not change the node. So that way you can make changes to everything on your site without worrying about having to manage links, without having to do that maintenance, right? So definitely, if it's internal, we want to search and link by that node, and the node is always going to be between 4 and 6-digit number. Most of the time for pages, it's going to be 5. And your homepage node is always going to be 9999. That'll never change. So now establishing parent link. So if I want this to be front and center, I don't want this to sit under another link, I can leave it at parent link, or I can select anything in here for it to be a child of, right? So if I want it to live under UI components, I would choose that as the parent link. However, I think there's an easier way to do this. So I'm going to save this new link. There's my new testing. But let's say I want to move testing under press releases. I'm going to click my pencil icon. I'm going to click on that edit menu. I'm going to find my testing page, and hopefully you can see them, but there's these 4 directional tools that sit next to every single link here. That is a click and drag feature. So I can click on it and drag it up and down to move its spot within the menu. So if I wanted to go all the way to the top so it lives under press releases, I'm going to do that. And so let's say I want it to be a child link of press release. I'm going to bump it down, and it's going to indent it so that when it's indented like this, it means press releases is now the parent link of our new testing page. So I'm going to hit save on this guy. It's going to think. And demo has some spaghetti code. We poke at this thing a lot. So it looks a little gross here, but when you actually apply it to your site, it's going to look closer to this, where it will live underneath that parent link under this arrow right there. And that's how you can manage your main navigation. That's just a really handy shortcut that I think is super helpful. You'll find this pencil all over. So you can even use this pencil to make changes to your footer directly. So if I were to click on this pencil icon and select edit within our footer, we can see here the rows that exist, and all of our footers are going to be on a rows and cards basis. So you can edit your footer directly from there as well. Okay, we're kind of at the Q&A portion of things. Is there anything specific you want to see? Any questions you have about your own site or requests, anything like that? Yeah, Phil.
Yeah, sorry. So a DPO is we're going to redesign our website here within the next year or so.
Mm-hmm.
And we started poking around at kind of some other state websites. One of them we looked at, which was Texas. And they're on their basic page, on their landing page for TLDR, they're using image card wrappers for their images. And I'm looking into it. It looks like that's a module. And I've noticed that some of our mods for us, they're I wouldn't say they're basic, but they're probably pretty default across the state agencies. Who do we contact when we want to see if we can get a module added, or if it's even feasible for that to happen?
No worries. So you would go through our partner support portal, and let me get you the link. Lives in my PowerPoint. I updated the PowerPoint to actually have the new link. So let me pop that in the chat for you.
Okay.
So you would just submit it through here, and it would go into a research and development phase. And I'm not going to mince words. It could take time for us to research that, and we could research it and find that it's not compatible with our flavor of Drupal. To be completely transparent, our Drupal is like a very custom version of what is vanilla Drupal, right? So there are some modules that we're going to find that work and we can implement them, and there are some modules that we can't. So definitely, and sometimes if you request something, we'll actually be able to find a workaround within the Drupal version that we have right now. So my request to you is that when you submit this, send screenshots, send your goal with it, and describe the module as best as you possibly can. But it's super important that you include screenshots in that ticket as well, so that we can do our best. So if we do research it, we find it is possible, and we start to develop it, we have something to kind of reference.
Gotcha. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I think Miguel left. He didn't have any questions, I guess. Anything else you want to see, Phil?
I don't think so.
No? Okay. Then I think we can probably call it here. That customer portal as well is also a place where you can request tradings, individual support. So if you have a weird bug on your site or you lost access to your site, you will use that exact same portal for customer support as you do for submitting new modules and things like that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, all those in the same spot now. Alrighty, so I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen. I don't think we have any more questions, so we'll call it for today. It was a small group. I appreciate y'all showing up. And yeah, go ahead and use that portal if you need anything else. But if there is nothing else, I'll go ahead and call it.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Sunny.
Of course, have a great rest of your day.